要保护我的吗？对不起。
This is absolutely the creepiest folk horror movie I have ever seen. The film is based on true supernatural events, and the atmosphere is intense from start to finish. Hurry up and tag your unlucky friends to watch it together. Every university has its own ghost stories and legends, but only the female ghost bridge at Donghu University in Taiwan is known as a forbidden zone of terror. Legend has it that a female student decided to elope with her boyfriend. They agreed to meet on the bridge, but the girl waited until midnight, 12 a.m., and her boyfriend never showed up. However, just as she was about to leave, several men suddenly rushed out from the woods. They took turns assaulting the girl and then drowned her in the lake. Since then, every leap year on February 28th, the bridge, which originally has only 13 steps, will mysteriously gain an extra step. At that moment, if you dare to look back, the female ghost will appear as promised. There were students who didn't believe in evil and held a courage test on the female ghost bridge, but in the end, without exception, they all died tragically in various corners of the campus. Behind all of this, what kind of secret is actually hidden? Time rewinds to 4 years ago. Several students, aiming to break the legend of the female ghost bridge, spontaneously organized a courage test event. But no one noticed that, before the ritual officially began, Sign Chiao secretly tore off the talisman under the bridge. Wen Yao was very resistant to this activity, because he firmly believed that ghosts exist, but he was still forcibly strapped into the chair by the others. Poju took out a red cloth to blindfold Wen Yao, making him sit and wait for the start command. Once everything was ready, a companion pulled the red string with bells. Wen Yao quickly took off the blindfold and walked tremblingly toward the stairs. However, as soon as he stepped onto the stairs, he started counting the steps uncontrollably. It's more exciting this way. Realizing something was wrong, Poju quickly stepped forward to stop him. But by then, Wen Yao had already stepped onto the 14th step. Before the group could react, the chair behind them suddenly moved weirdly on its own. They initially thought it was a prank by a friend, but when they looked back, Wen Yao had vanished into thin air. They immediately chased after him, only for a creepy doll to suddenly fall from the tree. Just as they were at a loss, the chair started shaking violently again. This terrifying scene scared everyone into fleeing the scene in panic. At this moment, Wen Yao, who was hiding in the dark, crawled out from the woods. As soon as he finished speaking, Wen Yao's phone notification rang. Kuan Yu sent a message praising him. That chair trick was awesome, and asked him to help collect the camera. Just as Wen Yao was about to look back, he suddenly remembered the taboo of the female ghost bridge. Just as he felt lucky for not turning his head and wanted to leave, the street lamp next to the stairs instantly went out. Now Wen Yao was completely panicked. He hurriedly took out his phone for light, but because he was too nervous, he accidentally dropped the phone. Thinking about how he scrimped and saved to spend a fortune on this latest model, Wen Yao plucked up his courage and slowly retreated down the stairs step by step. But after groping around on the ground for a long time, he failed to find the phone's location, so he had to try calling out to the voice assistant.
Hey Siri.
怎么了？
荧幕调到最亮。
好的。
Wen Yao used the reflection on his glasses to inch closer to the mobile phone. Unexpectedly, the light was suddenly blocked, causing him to completely lose his sense of direction.
Siri, 荧幕调到最亮。
Although he retrieved the phone with a scare but no harm, the deadly mistake was that he inadvertently looked back while on the bridge.
吓死我了，还以为有人。
Meanwhile, on the other side, the group that fled had returned to the dormitory. Wen Hei-seong told the others to go ahead, as he wanted to go to the toilet to relieve himself. Kuan Yu and Poju were just fooling around, completely failing to notice that a ghostly shadow was silently watching them, and that talisman that was torn off seemed to be foreshadowing that a disaster was about to happen. What kind of horror movie is this exactly, that it left countless netizens with indelible psychological trauma? Donghu University's supernatural events reported frequently. The once sensational supernatural events at Donghu University make people involuntarily suspect whether ghosts really exist in this world. A man was relieving himself in the toilet when suddenly a loud noise came from right next to his ear. But when he looked down, there wasn't even a ghost shadow. However, the strange noise was getting closer. In order to figure out who was playing tricks, Wen Xiang slowly extended his phone out. The moment he pressed the shutter, a ghost hand suddenly appeared and firmly grabbed his wrist. Wen Xiang used all his strength to yank his hand back, but strangely, there was now a bloody mark on it. Hearing that there was still movement outside, Wen Xiang charged out in anger, but after checking all the stalls, he found absolutely nothing. Just then, the sound of running water came from his ear. Wen Xiang followed the sound to the next room and saw that all the faucets had been turned on by someone. He quickly stepped forward to turn them off, but accidentally dropped his necklace into the water. Just as he was focused on fishing out the necklace, a metal bucket in the restroom actually rolled out from behind him. Wen Xiang mustered his courage and leaned in to check the bucket, discovering it had mysteriously filled with foul water out of thin air. Through the reflection on the water surface, he could vaguely see a dirty entity, but when he looked back, there was nothing there. Suddenly, a ghost hand reached out from inside the bucket and firmly pressed his head down. After a painful struggle, Wen Xiang completely ceased breathing. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Xin Qiao was anxious and frustrated, so she dragged her best friend Linen to the restroom. Just as she came out of the stall, she heard the sound of flushing from the next one. Xin Qiao thought it was Linen inside, so she didn't pay much attention. However, Linen walked in from outside the door.
你怎么从外面进来？你不是在上厕所？没有啊，你上来了。
After Linen learned of the situation, she held up her phone and started checking one by one. But when she reached the innermost stall, she actually walked straight into it. Such a boring joke made Xin Qiao very angry, and she left without looking back. Linen desperately wanted to follow, but her hands were covered in filth that wouldn't wash off no matter what. Feeling terrified, Linen wanted to escape quickly, but unexpectedly, Wen Xiang's cry for help came from behind. She turned around trembling, only to find Wen Xiang standing in a dark corner, in a bizarre posture. Ignoring her fear, Linen ran desperately toward the dormitory. Meanwhile, on the other side, Xin Qiao was just preparing to get into bed when a ghost hand suddenly reached out, scaring her into hastily hiding under the covers. Seeing that the dormitory had returned to silence, Xin Qiao dared to lift the quilt, but a drop of foul water dripped onto her head. Clearly, the dirty entity was right above her. Looking at the terrifying monster, Xin Qiao's courage shattered. She quickly ran towards the door, but the door had long been firmly locked. In this critical moment, Linen finally made it back. The two ran with all their might towards the exit. However, it was like they were trapped in a giant vortex, running back and forth endlessly between the second and third floors. Xin Qiao realized something was wrong first. She concluded they had encountered a ghost wall, so she smashed open the iron door and rushed out. But unfortunately, the two were trapped on the rooftop. The series of shocks caused Linen to have a complete mental breakdown, squatting on the ground and shivering violently. Seeing this, Xin Qiao comforted her.
振作一点，我会保护你。
我们根本就不该玩这个游戏的，我们一定逃不了的，逃不了。
Xin Qiao could no longer worry about Linen's state. She knew that only by finding an exit would they have a slim chance of survival.
知道，快起来！这边看。
Linen just stayed aside, crying and screaming, having long lost even the most basic ability to move. Before she could come to her senses, she was dragged into the water tank by the female ghost. After an unknown amount of time, Xin Qiao woke up from her coma. She hurriedly took out her phone to send a text message to the survivors, Po Ju and Quan Yu. But strangely, she had returned to the female ghost bridge again, and from time to time behind her came the sound of faint crying.
因为我如果要保护你，我是说过要保护我的吗？对不起。
Under the woman's terrified gaze, a ghost shadow slowly emerged. This horrific scene scared the woman into turning and running. However, she accidentally tripped and fell to the ground. Sign Xiao desperately crawled up the steps, but when she reached the last step, the female ghost was already right behind her. After a sharp scream, the lake surface returned to calm. Meanwhile, on the other side, seeing that Wen Yao had not returned for a long time, Kuan Yu took Po Ju to the monitoring room to check. Just as the two were fooling around, Po Ju accidentally saw a ghostly figure appear on the surveillance screen, but Kuan Yu didn't see anything. Po Ju changed her angle to look, and the ghost shadow had indeed disappeared. But when she switched back, the ghost shadow appeared again, and it was getting closer and closer to them.
我刚有看到。
Kuan Yu guessed it must be Wen Yao, so the two hurriedly went to the cosmetology room to find him. However, Kuan Yu searched the entire classroom, but didn't see any trace of Wen Yao. At this moment, a black shadow flashed past the door. Kuan Yu chased after it without a second thought, leaving Po Ju alone in the classroom. Looking at the bizarre mannequins in front of her, Po Ju couldn't help but shiver. Suddenly, all the faucets in the classroom turned on automatically. Immediately after, the mannequins behind her also started moving eerily. Before Po Ju could catch her breath, a head popped out. Po Ju was so scared she collapsed to the ground. Seeing the female ghost slowly approaching, Po Ju crawled desperately forward, but was still dragged back. Fortunately, Kuan Yu arrived in time to save her. Just as the two ran out of the cosmetology room, they were stopped by Xin Qiao, who had supposedly died. The two followed Xin Qiao all the way forward, but the further they walked, the more Kuan Yu felt something was wrong. Just as the two were about to flee, they were suddenly dragged all the way back to the bridge by a mysterious force. Kuan Yu, who caught up, saw Xin Qiao's terrifying appearance, and finally realized the truth. It turns out the current events and the previous ones are two different stories. This is actually the second courage test. As early as 2012, Xin Qiao had participated once. The reason she didn't die was that she signed a contract with the female ghost. As a condition for survival, Xin Qiao had to sacrifice 5 classmates to the female ghost 4 years later. So she organized this courage test in 2016. But since both storylines are played by the same set of actors, it can be confusing to watch. Seeing that the secret was out, Xin Qiao stopped hiding. She used telekinesis to control Po Ju's body, making her strangle her own neck. And the female ghost hiding behind the scenes also revealed her true face at this moment. Kuan Yu was so scared he ran for his life. But because he ran too fast, he accidentally sent himself to a dead end. Kuan Yu kept begging Xin Qiao for mercy, stating that as long as he could live, he would do anything. Are you sure you dare to live on now? Xin Qiao picked up a brick and handed it to him. Because the sacrifice required 5 people, and the ghost didn't care who they were. It's simple to live. In order to survive, he smashed the brick into Xin Qiao. In the blink of an eye, 4 years passed. A reporter arrived at the school, preparing to uncover the truth behind the female ghost bridge. By consulting a large amount of information, the reporter discovered a shocking secret. 6 students participated in the event back then, but only 5 died. 1 person mysteriously disappeared, and that person was his cameraman, Kuan Yu. Surviving is very difficult. Kuan Yu brought 5 classmates and made them step onto the stairs again at 12 a.m. midnight. Watching them step onto the 14th step, Kuan Yu finally revealed a satisfied smile. In fact, what is truly terrifying is not the cruel, evil ghost, but the human heart buried beneath the flesh. Alright, this video ends here. See you next time.